company. Go easy on me, I'm a bit nervous. And this topic is really new to me. I only discovered it about a week and a half ago, Socket.io in particular. Websockets, I've heard it tossed here and there, but just didn't really spend the time to dig into it. So I figured this would be a learning experience for me and hopefully you. I'm just wondering if anybody has dealt with it before. Anyone in the group here or over there?
Video
wall. Oh, okay, cool. I haven't done any work with it, but I could see that it's sort of simple to work with sometimes. But you may run into sort of these browser compatibility issues, and that's where Socket.io sort of comes into play and simplifies things. So the goal, for this presentation is just to highlight the power of WebSockets if you're not already familiar with it, like me, but to also recognize that there's a library out there. It happens to be for Node. It's called Socket.io, and we'll work on it.
Hey, something got broken with the microphone, guys.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear us? It's like infinite delay.
Yeah, now it's okay. I don't know.
Okay, so there's a Node library called Socket.io, and it sort of deals with the cross-browser compatibility issues for you and simplifies things really well. And there's a chat example that they have on their site that we're just going to walk through and demo and sort of dissect it to see where in the code, how simple it is to make these socket requests. And then maybe I'll go through a couple of ideas that people have used Socket.io for, and maybe we can brainstorm on some new ones for ourselves, just to whether supplement existing projects or something new. I was sort of impressed with the chat example that they had already out there. But we'll get started. So when you go to the Socket.io website, this is it. Pretty flashy, but they give you a little demonstration here. How minimalistic the code could be, yet, oh, sure. Okay, so this is the Socket.io website, socket.io, and they pretty much just lay out a very simple example, one where you, with a little bit of code, you can track tweets. So in this case, they're looking for any tweets that come with the word mentioning of Socket.io or JavaScript, and you can see they're being pushed from the server real time. And this is something that's fundamental to WebSockets, where you have a client and a server that can communicate in either direction. And I'll sort of just cover some background information on WebSockets, just for those.
That's my stick. Sorry.
Where? Oh, right down there?
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
You know the guy tweeting?
It's like employee
No.
looking for some guy.
Very cool. So this is real time, as you can see. Tweets are getting pushed. This is just an example they have on the website, but we'll go through another one too in detail. But when you start to think about this ability for a server to push, and think about how the web has evolved, where you start with, typically with HTTP, you start with a request, you send it to the server, you get a response back. You have this interaction, but sometimes you don't feel that you have that connected feel where you can have the server send you information when it sees new information coming in. And that's where sockets comes into play. And when we think about having that direct connection to the server where either party can talk to each other, you can sort of do things, and they sort of give examples here, real-time analytics. You can obviously push data to clients. For example, stock tickers, that's one example. Chat is the very simplistic example. Binary streaming is interesting, I think, where you can send data, binary data, or stream it rather. Streaming video games over a socket connection, where the client can just tap the arrows and send that to the server, and it'll interact with the character and send back screenshots. Or an online virtual machine, where it'll snapshot what the state of the virtual machine looks like, and you can interact with it over the web. And then, document collaboration, that's sort of like what Google Docs is like, where you can have multiple users just edit the document at the same time and you see each other's cursor on the screen. That's what the site has. Let's go through.
In that Twitter example, is that using a Twitter WebSocket, or how's that getting its tweets?
I think you must be, because when I downloaded the Socket.io library, it didn't have anything like that built in. So I think it's something that Twitter has exposed that you can use.
Yeah,
What was that?
we do the same thing in the
Oh, dude. Oh, cool.
Twitter API.
So that was Socket.io, but I mean, under the hood, what Socket.io is doing is just basically, it's an API. It has an API for both the client and the server, and it simplifies. The idea is to simplify sockets, and not just that, it has fallback strategies. Under the documentation, which I'll go through a little bit later, but under the documentation, it sort of tells you about the fallback strategies. For example, if WebSockets isn't supported on the browser, it'll fall back to AJAX long polling, or any kind of polling mechanism just to support that communication. And that's sort of what it tries to excel at. But they're only at version 1, I think 1 right now, or 1.3. So it's still evolving, and it's not perfect, but I think it does a pretty good job so far from what I've seen. And as far as WebSockets, it's an API that the browser supports. At least most modern browsers now support them. It was introduced, I think, standardized in 2011. And just to create a WebSocket, you would just use the WebSocket object, open the connection, and you send events, what they call messages, and then ultimately you close it. So it seems really straightforward, but again, the browser support, or being able to deal with different browsers, that's sort of when Socket.io comes into play to simplify things.
What about WebSocket? I have a question, sorry.
Sure.
For the WebSockets, did they move on with the backend server support?
That's a good question. As far as the server side of WebSockets, you have libraries, for example, in PHP that could handle WebSockets. However, the difference with Socket.io is that it's relying on Node, and when you're relying on Node, you can leverage that event-driven, non-blocking I/O model. So when you're talking about a high-traffic website, your Node.io would have that advantage to handle that. Whereas if you're using Apache to handle incoming socket connections, your connections are going to grow depending on how many users are trying to connect. And at that point, I think the way Apache works is it's sort of spawning a new thread or a new process for every connection, unless they've improved things. But
Same work process.
yeah, so that would obviously be memory intensive over a lot of connections.
Java too has it's into their language. You can start directly and send data across.
Yeah, but there's, what we found when we were building our video wall, there's few limitations. One is the server backend support. So we had to do play. And then if you want to cluster it, it's kind of impossible because none of the proxies currently would support WebSockets connections. So we had to literally tunnel directly. So all the firewalls TCP to that particular node port, so we had WebSockets working. And the HTTP traffic would go on a separate channel, more or less. So there is a limitation. I mean, it's cool, but support is on the back end.
So network-wise, it's a lot closer to sockets than HTTP, right?
Yeah.
So it's just
Basically, if you do Node, you would run nodes to support sockets and Apache to support HTTP.
Somebody probably is going to build a library to
So what
fix that.
we tested libraries for Apache and it didn't work out well.
I mean, it sounds like a straightforward problem, right? Just
Yeah.
like coordinating communication among the servers. Maybe there's something with Zookeeper that can manage that. I don't know. It's worth looking at.
What I have seen with Apache is that somebody had this, you can, with Apache 2.4, there's this proxy plugin, and the proxy plugin would just basically forward your socket request to your node server. So you could have both running where your Apache is serving your ordinary pages and any of these special socket requests would get forwarded to the node server.
Me and Ian were experimenting with that. Why did it not work? Remember?
I don't think we were experimenting with that.
At the beginning when we were setting up video wall,
We were using those.
No, we were using Play, right?
Yeah.
But the fact is that we still had to set up Play without Apache. No proxy, no nothing.
I didn't really get involved in that part. I feel like that was mostly you.
Yeah, alright.
But yeah, I do remember that Apache was
Didn't
not
work.
playing nice with Websockets this time. You were like recommending like Nginx or something like that.
Yeah.
With the example that I saw with Apache and Node running it concurrently, what the trick was to have the with Socket.io, there's an API for the client and for the server, and when you serve the JS file for the client, it's got to come from the Node server, not from the Apache server. And when you do that, then it'll work side by side. So that's how this person I saw had it running with Apache and Node. As long as the client JS file comes from the Node side, then it should be fine. As far as WebSocket support in the browsers, I think we'll be okay. As far as IE, it's still going to stand out. Although what Socket.io does is supposed to fall back. Actually, what it does is it works through an upgrade method. Instead of falling back, it sort of rolls forward, where it'll start with a long polling approach, AJAX polling, and then move up to WebSockets if it's supported. But let's go into an example. On their site, they have a chat. The code's out there, and you can just clone it. I've done it before, and I can just do it now again. And we'll host it and just get it going. Sorry, just running through some things here. Okay. And I think the instructions now say just do a couple of little implementations.
So that's basically that you already have a node.
Yeah.
Everything installed, right?
Yeah, I did run into trouble installing the Socket.io on Windows. Apparently, it needs the Microsoft C compiler. Sorry, I think it was the C compiler, and the runtime in order to install it, because it's actually compiling a C file.
Is there a Sigwin port for this?
Sorry, what was that, Mark?
Sigwin. Is there a Sigwin port?
There is. I actually have it. I even have it running. Yeah, there is. But they may have stopped supporting it at one point.
Yeah.
I think I've seen that. Okay, so at this point, I just installed the dependencies for this particular chat application. And I think I'm able to get it running at this point. Let's see if we can spot the issue.
Handle error event. So PR.
That's fine. Well, just for the sake of time, I'll resort to one I already have. But let's get example chat. Let me make sure I didn't make a little type. Install.
We already running, so it can bind.
Prior to go, of course. Let me just be here. That doesn't look like it.
No, but in the Sigwin window.
We'll scroll down. There's
There you go. Okay, so great, got that resolved. So now at this point, it's listening to a port which have to speak 3000, and you can go to the site. If you guys are VPN to the network here, you can go to it too. I'll give you my IP. Is there a way to type it in here? Is there a chat? Or if you could type it in the bottom. Oh, okay.
What's the IP?
It's 192. 168.1.146, I believe. And port number 3000. 146. Okay. You guys are already in the chat before I am. Okay, so I just joined the chat, and you can see the WebSockets in action. Chrome has support for debugging these, and you'll see that it made a request right there. And then what it actually does is it what they call an upgrade request. So it starts off with an HTTP request, but the HTTP request is merely just an upgrade to WebSocket request. The WebSockets obviously have the WS, follow the WS HTML. And as far as monitoring the data that's being passed back and forth, you look under frames. So if I was typing something, oh, it should show the phone line. You guys can do this on your side too. If you go to your development tools,
Is it on their console, maybe?
I think you have to refresh.
Yeah, you have to
Yeah.
refresh the whole page.
There you go.
okay, cool.
Yes.
So there's the activity from everybody.
Very chatty.
And we'll look at the code in just a bit, but just to see things moving in action, the messages that are getting sent. And it has debugging support. So you can debug things from the client side as well as the server side. That was the sentence. It's strange. It was really chatty. You can see a lot of information here. I wonder if there's something I'm doing right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, it's got jQuery, so you can see the animation fading in when the user's typing, when the message comes up. Gives you the number of participants, who joins and who leaves. So I guess, well, if I can get, surprised the debugging isn't working, I just got it working earlier, but we'll jump to the code and just look at the code and see how simple it is to get this up and running. What was that? Yeah, links don't actually work in this particular example. Hyperlinks. I know. Well, that's Rust enhanced, right?
We'll keep you out of the chat room, Brian.
Yeah. I'll report this user.
If we look at the code, let's see, I have it open down here. There's two sides, obviously. There's the client side and there's the server side. Index.js, because this is running on the node server, that is the actually server side. And yeah, I didn't put Sublime too much. View. Anybody see it?
Just try control.
What are you trying to do? Split it?
Just, enlarge the font or zoom in.
Just try control.
Oh, you can just do a Control Plus to do it.
Okay.
That usually works. Well,
So there's two files here. There's just the index.js and there's the main.js. This is the client side, and this is on the server side. And you can see if you want to actually, the way it works is when you want to send a message, you're just sort of emitting, because it's sort of event-based, and if you're just trying to say that this person, in this case, we're in the server side, so if the server sees that the client's emitting this typing message, it's going to broadcast to everybody else, this other client's typing. And that's all it takes. A series of on, where you're attaching functions to messages. And these messages could be anything. The titles could be anything. It could say stop typing. Obviously, the simple disconnect, connect. But it's all event-driven, where you just bind a function, and it'll call that function whenever that event is emitted, whether it's from the client or from the server. So if we move on to the client side, we see that on login, for example, it'll execute this function. And when the client gets pushed a message from the server saying it's a new message, it'll add it to our local chat. Same thing for the other messages. If a new user joined in, so if the server emits this user join message, it'll just call this function. So as you can see, it sort of follows that event-based model, and that's what makes it really simple to work with. And the fact that it abstracts the way Websockets is actually working in the browsers is really powerful. Any questions so far before I move on?
And those methods are on the bottom there, like log and participant.
They're probably, well, these are standard, let's see. I thought they're standard functions. No, it's probably up here. Let's see. The console, there it is. In this case, it's just using jQuery to simplify some things. But you can do a no-frills chat application, which is strictly the with these bindings down here on different message types, and you can get a chat up and going in just a matter of minutes. This one just happened to be so fancy because of the animation, the fading, transitions, and the jQuery that's involved. But the simplicity of it is something that just sort of attracted me to it. Now back to the chat. They've done this major release. Socket.io has done this major 1.0 release back in May. They've done lots of things. Actually, the way it works is there's this underlying engine.io library that does the transport mechanisms, whether it's WebSockets or long polling, whether it's Ajax or even Flash sockets, whatever the browser supports. That's all handled in engine.io. So if you didn't want to use Socket.io and you just wanted to strictly deal with an API that does the transporting, that handles the transporting, you can just work with engine.io.
you can turn off WebSockets and Engine.io.
You can configure, I'm not sure if it's on this page, but you can configure what transports you want to support in a config file before you pass it to engine.io. That's right. And apparently they're reducing their code base, so they're down to 976 lines of code, Socket.io.
You deleted your comments.
Yeah.
Spaces. That's such a bonus metric.
And the binary support, which I found really interesting, you can send files. So in this case, they have a little snippet here. On a connection, you can read a file, or you can send it. So you can push images to your clients. And as you might have seen earlier, the streaming, you can push a stream, an image, video to your client. So you could sort of have this synchronized video playing across various clients. Everybody could be watching the same clip at the same second at that point in time. So it synchronizes it, essentially what they call real time, because it's keeping everybody in sync. And what they've sort of experimented with is having this online game where it's streaming the visuals, the animation, and you can interact with the actions. So you're pushing actions, and it's feeding back images. I tried running this WePlay.io. I opened the site. I think it was having some, maybe they need to update it because when I went through it, it was sort of glitchy. Well, looks like it's working. It's flashing earlier.
Is it just this game that's on here?
What was that, Mark?
Wait, is it just this game that's on here, or can you load other games?
It's just this game.
Not like Earl emulator.
So the second half playing game.
So I mean, the concept is you can have a game running on the server and stream it to the client, more than one client, and they can sort of have this multiplayer effect.
Massive multiplayer.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I think he even has an example here with Counter-Strike. But another example of a virtual machine running in the cloud, and you can interact with it.
Like the training and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the computer in the browser?
Yeah.
It's all images already.
Yeah, it's just sending images, streaming, and it's keeping everybody in sync. I think they even have that Counter-Strike example.
Oh,
So you could play a game through the cloud.
that does too, dude.
If you're using the server's resources to do the graphics, then you're just sending images, rasterized images to the client.
It's funny because Amazon just released a new product where you could do all your computations in the cloud for like CPU intensive or GPU intensive computations. So you could run the game completely on Amazon, stream the images back.
Mm-hmm.
So you could even play it on something with very low resources.
That's NVIDIA Shield technology.
That's what for?
NVIDIA has this Shield technology, we call it, where they would actually have a video card capable of streaming all of network games to like little dinky devices like consoles and stuff. You can, have a Counter-Strike on your like, well, how this is.
It's pretty cool.
But can you really stream all these images so fast?
I'm thinking.
This is
Yeah.
this is an actual
I wonder what the FPS
Let's give
was
it that.
actually happening, but yeah.
Bring some seconds.
How large are these images?
Well, in this case, they mentioned it over here. Let's see if I can get back. In this case, they're using this library called RFB2, where it sort of streams portions around the cursor, things that do change. So there's no reason to send an entire image
Right.
if most of it has been the same.
Guys running this in camera.
Yeah. So, but in this case with the Counter-Strike, though, I mean, a lot of it's changing, even except I guess the top here, but all this is sort of moving.
You gotta be on a really fast network to
Well, it's designed for local networks.
Yeah.
Like you're going to be always internet.
And that's even Websockets, sort of low latency compared to an HTTP protocol. So
It's like the extreme end of it, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, they're trying to show the technology what it's capable
Yeah.
of, but are the people going to do this? Not anywhere, anytime soon. I mean,
At the same time, you could run the game on the client and just still make a game using Socket.io by sending messages.
Yeah,
It's better
it's
synchronized.
basically, you can use it as a framework to build on top of it,
You can go half and half. Let the server do some stuff, and let the client do some.
right, share the workload
Yeah.
between the client and server. That's true.
So Microsoft did it, right?
This is the virtual machine they had running cloud. It has a problem apparently, but
Obviously.
missing
One of those.
Until you guys listen.
But it's nice to see it's a live image. I wonder how accurate that cursor blink is. If that could be.
Control Alt Delete. Let's see.
Mhm.
Oh, that is so devious.
It's been on the computer.
Somebody did it, maybe. I don't know.
I'm sure they did.
But server side, how are they getting this image?
They may be using
Screen
the.
capture?
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what he said in the blog. But I think even like virtualization software may have APIs that you could sort of use to do screenshots too. But in this case, I think they are doing basic screenshots. So you can see it's chatty, but it's not chatty to the point where you're suffering with occupying the resources of the server. So the fact that it can handle, it doesn't say how many clients can be connected at this moment in time, but you could do something like that. And I was wondering myself whether you can have one client transmit a message to another client. Turns out you could. When the client connects, it gets an ID, and that server gets an ID back to the client, which the client can use to relay a message. But the relay is going to happen through the server. So if a client wants to send something to client 1 wants to send it to client 2, it's got to go through the server. It's not peer-to-peer.
Yeah. Here's
like
no
we may
private
think.
chat.
Yeah. But I mean,
sees all.
Sees all anyway.
well,
Big brother.
Yeah.
considering how quick and easy you can load up Node and this library, I mean, you can do a peer-to-peer if you really wanted to.
Yeah. Pretty cool.
Using encryption.
That would be WebRTC, right?
Yeah.
If you want peer-to-peer.
It's true. So I was looking to see what other ideas people came up with. And there's sites out there that just shows you projects. I picked a couple that sort of I highlighted it to myself and thought I would just share. So I was that chat example. You know, what if there's a site out there that lets you create an anonymous chat without having to run up your own Node server, but something out there? There is one, Deed.io. Start an anonymous chat. You get a link, send that link to your buddies, and then everybody can just join in.
Wow.
Yeah, there is something like a website too that just, you could do a poll, like, you know, votes, kind of like this.
Right, real-time voting.
Real-time voting.
That's a good, right, I've seen that too, that's a
Do
good
like
one.
poll.io.
Mhm. And so this is anonymous, meaning it's not stored, the chat messages you send to each other isn't being saved in a database, so once you everybody exits, that's it, information's gone.
Alright, that's what they want you to do.
Tell us all your secrets.
Can Google just buy this site?
Another example, obviously that, real-time document editing on this one site, etherpad.org. They sort of made what Google Docs has done. Multiple cursors working on the screen. Apparently you download it and install it, so I'm guessing it's running a local version of Node. I'm not sure, I didn't try this myself, but the concept isn't new to us. We've seen that before.
Yeah, it's probably a browser plugin, because that's what you need from Google anyway. Yeah.
Oh, for Google Docs.
Yeah, there's a plugin, dude. Look at your Chrome settings.
Another site here with sticky notes. You create your own note, it just sticks there, and it may be using local storage to save the notes. But it pushes it out to the server, and other users can see the same notes. This one interesting project I saw. This is one of the ones I've seen that involved hardware. I was sort of interested in seeing how to incorporate this with hardware, and this one company created a digital foosball table where they hooked up, sort of digitized a foosball table where they had sensors hooked up to the table so it could monitor scoring and push it out, tweet it, whatever. And they've open sourced it, so the code is there. Is that it here? Yeah, digital foosball. Code is out there, you can go through it. And I think they just pretty much...
Arduino.
Yeah, they used an Arduino, excuse me. I was looking to see how I've seen it somewhere where they use Socket.io, but I think it's just for streaming or pushing out the scores, tweeting the scores. But it's an interesting project because it's one that involves hardware, and I sort of find that interesting. And there's others, Raspberry Pi projects. I came across to share this with a couple of the guys here. This person has happened to using Socket.io to handle the connection between the remote and the TV. So you can control the TV with your smartphone remote. It's basically a web page that's hosted, and you just do it that way. And there's plenty of blogs out there you can find of other examples. If you're interested in learning more or just seeing what's up to date or what people are talking about, there is a Slack conversation channels that are out there, slack.io.slack.com. You could join in and talk to others who are working with Socket.io. And then that may be it. So, any questions? If not, then
So the one with the Raspberry Pi,
So you can use your move like a remote but anywhere, or you need to be in the same NIC?
You can, sure, there's a way you can, because you're setting it up on, because Node is going to be monitoring at a certain port, as long as that port can still be reachable from the outside, you have to do some port forwarding with your router, then you could sort of go, but there may be software out there that will expose that port safely, and so you can remotely from an outside network control.
You want to change your salad remotely?
Is that your wife?
He's trying to mess with his wife while she's watching TV.
I do that with my printer at home.
Best friend.
Yeah. It's funny.
Yeah.
I know what you did last summer.
Yeah. Start cooking.
So isn't
Get a hard
supported
copy
in all the
going
latest
immediately,
browsers?
right?
That's what they claim. They claim that it does support all the. I think naturally because WebSockets has caught up now, so it does have native support in the browsers, that we should be fine with the latest ones. I did do some experiments with IE7 and IE8. Ran into some issues, but I think it may be related to the networking setup with the VMs. Not sure yet, but I've seen people say that it works, so I take it for their word. Maybe something isolated to just the VMs.
Are there other frameworks alongside Socket.io?
Well, okay,
Sister projects?
yeah, that's a good question. Well, I mean, Socket.io is using Engine.io, which handles the transport. So I'm sure there are projects out there that are using just the Engine.io part, and not necessarily the Socket.io. Socket.io sort of just abstracts a lot of that stuff. But yeah, I think I did come across projects that use Engine.io.
If you want to, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
If you want to check it out, there's an example of using WebSockets for a game, also using Socket.io. Go to treasurearena.com, and that's a game, that's a browser-based, HTML5 game that's pretty well developed, and it's using
Am I spelling it right out?
libraries.
Treasure.
Treasure as in, hey, treasure, yeah. Arena.
.com?
Yeah. That's a HTML5 game that's built on Socket.io. It's multiplayer. It's sort of a, hack and slash kind of thing.
So is this this is being hosted, the game action, is that happening on the server side? Or what?
Both, yeah.
Client side?
There's both sides handle different parts of the game. And I know that the guy who did it really, it was really painful the first time he tried to do it without Socket.io, and then he went for Socket.io and got a little better. Even though it's still JavaScript, and therefore it's painful forever, but yeah.
Pick up.
I'm glad we're recording this.
Yeah! Well, thank you, Alex. That's pretty cool.
Should minimize it before someone walks by.
You're a game
I'm
dude,
dying,
man.
yeah.
Killed, man. Got smothered.
I know we're in the
How about that, what do you call it? Mount your friend?
What's that?
You look it up.
Not my friend, oh,
Not
my
my friend.
friends.
It's an actual online multiplayer game. I don't know about WebSockets, so actually maybe, yeah.
Is it always sending JSON back and forth? I guess it is, right?
Yeah. But that may be a Socket.io thing, not necessarily an Engine.io thing. Like maybe,
That's a
Like a
little much of a
WebSocket
pain
message
for
is just a
real-time
string,
communication.
essentially.
So I don't care what it is.
What's the other sort of language protocol that it's like JSON, but it's not. They cut out more stuff.
Not XMPP, is it?
No, not these. It's another thing.
XMPP?
One of those PHP frameworks uses it for
Common?
configs.
YAML.
Oh.
YAML. That's
Oh.
it. Yeah. What's it? That's like without the quotes, I think. Is it?
I don't remember, but it's very close to JSON.
Yeah.
I think it was invented before JSON.
There's some great references I found on the web that I'll just share out on the supposed blog for others to see. But all right, well, thank you.
Treasury is going to see us.
Start playing.
So powerful, it's giving everyone danger. So